So, I am ready for you. Now we're going to do The Last Single Maverick by Christine Rimmer. They're just friends. Jason, quote-unquote Jace Traub, is every bit as gorgeous as his sexy twin brother, but even more marriage shy. A failed engagement and his firm refusal to work in the Traub oil business means that he and his family members pushing and pulling him in every direction, but only the one he wants. Catching her fiancé cheating on their wedding day has left Jocelyn Bennings jobless, homeless, and painfully single. While celebrating her, quote, unhoneymoon, she bumps into the restless rancher at a bar. Before you know it, they decide to be, quote, best friends, end quote, for a week. But what happens when it's time to say goodbye? Oh, what happens and what happens? Of course, you know, this is part of the Western Hearts series that I love. Christine Rimmer is one of my favorite authors. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about Christine before we hit all of the good points in this book. We may not hit all of them tonight, but since I can't work out until the house is worked on, we'll probably hit most of the book. Christine Rimmer came to her profession the long way around. She tried everything from acting to teaching to telephone sales. Now she finally found the work that suits her perfectly. She insists she never had a problem with keeping a job. She was merely gaining, quote, life experience, end quote, for her future as a novelist. Christine lives with her family in Oregon. Visit her at christinerimmer.com. She dedicates this book to all of her readers who are the best. We're going to start in at page 11. To his right, the large elderly woman Ethan had spoken to a few moments before said warmly, such a lovely young girl. The old lady's warm tone turned cool as she spoke directly to Jason. But I can see you're not interested. He kept working away at his ear of corn in hopes that a large old lady would turn and talk to the smaller old lady on the other side. No such luck. I'm Melba Laundry, she said, Lizzie's great aunt. Lizzie was Ethan's wife. Resigned, Jason gave the woman a nod. Pleased to meet you, ma'am. I'm Jason Traub, Lizzie's brother-in-law. I know very well who you are, young man. Aunt Melba looked down her imposing nose at him. I was married to Lizzie's great-uncle Oliver for more than 50 years. Oliver, rest his soul, passed on last October. The Lord never saw fit to bless us with children of our own. I moved to Thunder Canyon just this past April. It's nice to be near Lizzie. Family is everything, don't you think? Jason? Page 12. Yes, ma'am, everything. To his left, he was vaguely aware that the second cousin sitting there had risen. Someone else slipped into the empty spot, and Aunt Melba wasn't through with him. Yet. Jason, you know that we're all concerned about you. Kind of seems that way, yes. He got busy on the second ear of corn, still hoping that putting all of his attention on food would get rid of her. It had worked with Belinda, but Aunt Melba was not about to give up. I understand that you're having some kind of life crisis. He swallowed a wad of corn, went down hard. He grabbed his water glass and knocked it back a giant gulp. Life crisis? No, ma'am, I'm not. Please call me Melba, and there's no point in lying about it. I'm 76 years old, young man. I know a man in crisis when I see one. No, ma'am, he said again, I mean that. There's no crisis. By then he was starting to feel a little like Judas at the Last Supper. If he just kept denying, maybe she would go away. I asked you to call me Melba, she corrected a second time, more sternly. Sorry, Melba, but I mean it. I'm not having a crisis. I'm doing just fine, and really, There's a lovely church here in the town that I've been attending. Everyone is so friendly. I felt at home there from the first, and so will you, Jason. Tomorrow, join us, the Thunder Canyon Community Church, North Main at Cedar Street. Come to the service at 10. I'll be watching for you. There's no problem in this wide world that a little time with the Lord can't resolve. Well, Melba, thank you for the invitation. I'll try to be there. Get involved, young man, Melba instructed with an enthusiastic nod of her imposing double chin. That's the first step. Stop sitting on the sidelines of life. She opened her mouth to say more, but the white-haired lady on the other side touched her arm and spoke to her. Melba turned to answer. Jace held his breath, and then luck was with him. Melba and the old ladies had struck up a conversation. That was page 12 and 13. That part kind of reminded me of one of my favorite Hallmark movies, Love on the Sidelines. If you haven't seen that movie, you got to see it. Moving forward. Okay, page 16. The lounge, he thought. It was a bar in the clubhouse, and that was exactly what he needed right now. The lounge was kind of a throwback, really. A throwback to earlier times when cattlemen had their own private clubs where women didn't trespass. In the lounge, the lights were kept soothingly low. The bar was long and made of gleaming burled wood. It had comfortable conversation areas consisting of dark wood tables and fat studded leather chairs. Women seemed to avoid the lounge. They tended to prefer the more open, modern bar in the upscale Gallatin room or the cowboy casual cafe style of the bar in the rib shack. The lounge was perfect for the mood he was in. He found it, and as he hoped as it might be, most deserted. One lone customer sat at the bar. A woman, surprisingly enough. A brunette. Jace liked the look of her instantly, which surprised him. As a rule, lately, it didn't matter how hot or good-looking a woman was. He just wasn't interested. Not on any level. But this woman was different. Special. He sensed that at first sight. She had a whole lot of thick, tousled brown hair tumbling down her back. In the mirror over the bar, he could see that she had big brown eyes and full kissable lips. She was dressed casually in jeans and a giant white shirt untucked. She wore very little makeup. And the best thing about her, she seemed so relaxed. Like she wasn't after anything except a sip of her margarita and enjoy the quiet comfort of the lounge. Saw him watching her in the mirror, over the bar. For a second or two their eyes met. He felt a little curl of excitement down inside him before she glanced away. Instantly he wanted her to glance at him again. Surprise, excitement, the desire that a certain woman might give him a second look. These all were the emotion with which he become completely unfamiliar. Yeah, all right. It wasn't news that he used to be something of a player, but in the past 6 months or so, he was tired of being a ladies' man. Like he was just tired about everything lately, including finding the right woman and settling down. That's page 16, 17. Here comes 18. Because, yeah, Jason had tried that, or at least he wanted to try it, with a certain rich girl swimsuit model named Trisha Lavelle. It hadn't worked out. In fact, the whole experience had been seriously disheartening. A cell phone on the bar started ringing. The brunette picked it up and scowled at the display and then put it to her ear. "What do you want?" She let out an audible sigh. "You're not serious." "Oh, please, Kenny, get real. It's over. Move on." She hung up and dropped the phone back on the bar. Jace took the stool next to her and signaled the bartender. "Jack Daniels Rock." The bartender poured and set his drink in front of him. "And another margarita," Jace added, "for the lady." "No, thanks." She shook her head at the barkeep, and he let them alone. Then she turned to Jace and granted him a patient look from the fine pair of enormous brown eyes. "No offense," she said. "None taken. And don't even think about it, okay? I'm on a solo vacation right now. I hate men." He studied her face. It was such a great face. One of those faces a guy could look at forever and still find new expressions in it. Already, I really like you." "Didn't I just say I hate men? That makes you a challenge. Haven't you heard men love a challenge?" "I'm serious. Don't bother. It's not going to happen." He faced the rows of the liquor bottles arrayed in front of the mirror over the bar and shrugged. "Okay, if you're sure." She shot him a look. "Oh, come on. Is that the best you've got?" He leaned his head on his hand and then admired the way the dim barroom light somehow managed to bring out the glints of her auburn, thick, wavy hair, dark hair. "Uninspired, huh?" She almost smiled. "Well, yeah. Story of my life lately. I've got no passion for the game." "What game?" He shrugged again. "Any game." She considered that. "Wow," she said finally. "That's sad." "Yeah, it is, isn't it?" She frowned and then looked up at him sideways. "Wait a minute. Stop right there, buddy. I'm on to you." "Oh? What am I up to?" "You sit there looking gorgeous and bored. I find that I have a longing to bring some life back into your eyes." Page 18, 19, here comes 20. I let you buy me another margarita, and after all, I go home with you. We have wild, hot, incredible boom boom, but in the morning, you're looking bored again, and I'm feeling cheap and used. He decided to focus on the positive. You think I'm gorgeous? That was not my point. It was a cautionary tale. I think you're gorgeous, he said, and meant it, and that's kind of a breakthrough for me. A breakthrough? She was not impressed. You're kidding me. I am as serious as a bad blind date. You're the first woman I've felt attracted to in months. Who's Kenny? She shook a finger at him. You listened in on my cell phone call. Not exactly. I overheard your phone call. I'm just saying it was a private conversation, and I don't even know your name. Jason Traub. Call me Jace. He offered his hand. She shook it. Jocelyn Marie Biddings. Call me Josh. It felt good, he realized, just to hold her hand. It felt comfortable and exciting, too, both at once. That was the first for him, that was a first for him anyway. As a rule, with women, it was one or two or the other. He didn't want to let go, but in the end, it wasn't his choice. She eased her hand free. My wedding was supposed to be a week ago today. Kenny was the groom. Supposed to be? You mean you didn't marry him? No, I didn't. And I should have backed out long before the wedding day, but Kenny and I were together for 5 years. It was going to be a beautiful wedding. You should see my wedding gown. I still have it. I couldn't bear to get rid of it. It's fabulous. Acres of beading, yards of the finest taffeta and tulle. We planned a nice reception afterward at my restaurant. You own a restaurant? No, I mean the restaurant I was managing, until I quit to marry Kenny. I gave up a great job for him, just like I gave up my cute apartment, because I thought I wouldn't need it anymore either. But then you didn't marry Kenny. I already said that. I didn't. Just wanted to be sure. So what went wrong? Why didn't you marry the guy? She ran a finger around the rim of her margarita glass. Who's telling this story, Jace? Page 20 and 21. Here comes 22. He gave her a nod. You are, Josh. Absolutely. Carry on. It was going to be the perfect wedding. He nodded once more to show her again that he was listening, but he did not interrupt again. She went on, and after the wedding and the lovely reception, there was this great getaway honeymoon right here at Thunder Canyon Resort, followed by a move to San Francisco. Kenny's a very successful advertising executive. He just hit the big time and got transferred to the Bay Area. Josh paused. She turned her glass by the stem. He wanted to prompt her to tell him what went wrong, but he didn't. He waited patiently for her to go on, as she promised he would. Finally, she continued, I got all the way to the church last Saturday. Camellia City Methodist in Sacramento. It's a beautiful church. And I was born and raised in Sacramento and lived there all my life. I like my hometown. In fact, I didn't really want to move to San Francisco, but I was willing to support my future husband in his powerhouse career. And I would have gone through with the wedding in spite of my doubts. He promised to let her tell it her way, but still, he had to know what doubts. She shook her head. Kenny used to be such a sweet guy, but the more successful he got, the more he changed. He became someone I didn't even know. And then I caught him with my cousin Kimberly in the coat room. Hold on, you lost me. What coat room? She shook her head again as though she couldn't quite believe it. The coat room at the Camilla City Methodist. Jace let his mouth fall open. Kenny canoodled with Kimberly in the coat room on the day of your wedding? Oh yeah, and it was beyond canoodling. Kimberly was halfway out of her hot pink satin bridesmaid dress, and someone unzipped Kenny's fly. Both of them were red-faced and breathless. Kind of ruined the whole experience for me, you know? He made a low noise in his throat. I guess so. Josh picked up his cell phone, studied it for a moment, and set it back down. So I threw the engagement ring in his face and got back the heck out of there. And here I am at the resort anyway, having my honeymoon minus the groom. He tipped his head at the phone. But Kenny keeps calling. Oh, yes, he does. Page 22, 23. Here comes 24. What a douchebag. She sipped her margarita. My sentiments exactly. I hate guys like that. He blew it already. He should have let a little dignity and leave you alone, but instead it's, Josh, please, I love you, and I want this to work this out. Come back to me. I'm sorry, okay? And that silly little thing with Kimberly, it meant nothing. It will never happen again. Josh laughed. She had such a beautiful, husky, warm sort of laugh. How did you do that? You even captured the slightly wounded, whiny tone of his voice. Like I'm the one with the problem. Jace stared at her wide, soft mouth in an unabashed admiration. I like your laugh. She gave him the sternest frown. Didn't I tell you not to go there? He was about to argue that he wasn't going anywhere, but he only liked the way she laughed. But before he could get the words out, Teresa Duval sauntered up behind him and took the stool on the other side. Jace? Teresa's hand closed over his arm. He looked down at her fingernails, which were long and done up for the holiday, with glittery red stripes and tiny pink, sparkly little white stars. She leaned close and purred, I'm a determined woman, and there's no way you're escaping me. Okay. He knew he had himself to blame if Teresa considered him the perfect candidate for another no-strings night of meaningless boom-boom. But he really liked Josh. Josh, that's Joss. And he never had a chance with her now. Not with Teresa pulling on his arm, eyeing him like a starving person eyes on a steak dinner. And it wasn't even that he wanted a chance with Josh, and not that kind of chance anyway. He just liked her a lot. And liked talking with her, liked hearing her laugh. He didn't even want her to leave. Shocked the socks off of him when she didn't leave. Somehow, she picked up on the desperate look he sent her, and not only did she stay right where she was, she wrapped her arm around his shoulder and pulled him away from Teresa, drawing him close to her side. Wow, it felt really, really good to have her holding on to him, to feel her softness and warmth of her. She smelled like soap and starch and sunshine and roses, maybe a little tequila. Sorry, she said to Teresa, her tone regretfully. This one's taken. Teresa blinked, and then she let go of his arm and scowled. Jace, what is your problem? You should have told me you were with someone. I want a good time as much as any girl, but I never would steal another woman's man. 24, 25, 26. He was totally lost, awash in the superfine sensation of having Joss's arm around him. But then she nudged him to the side, and he realized he was supposed to speak. Yeah, you're right, Teresa. I'm an ass. I should have said something. Josh clucked at her tongue and rolled her eyes. We had a fight. He's been sulking. Teresa groaned. Oh, I know how that goes. Men. I don't let myself get serious with them anymore. They're just not worth it. Josh pulled him even closer, and then she kissed his ear. It was barely a breath of a kiss, but still, with her arm around him and her lips close to his ear, he could almost forget what he had no interest in women anymore. He was enjoying every minute of this, and he wished that she would never let go. I hear you, she told Teresa, but her breath was all warm and tempting in his ear. But when it's true love, well, what can you do? Teresa just shook her head. The bartender approached, and Teresa shook her head at him, too, and then without another word, she got up and left. Instantly, Josh released him and retreated to her own stool. Jace felt kind of bereft, but grateful. She had done him a favor and gotten Teresa off his back. Thanks, I owe you one. He raised his glass. She tapped hers against it. Okay, I'll bite. Who was that? Her name is Teresa Duval. Last year she was working at the Hitch and Post. It's this great time old bar and grill down in the town on the corner of Main Street and Thunder Canyon Road. She knew you pretty well. Not really. He didn't want to say more, but Josh was looking at him with a look that seemed to expect him to tell the truth, so he did. I had a thing with her last summer, a very short thing. A thing? Yeah, what specifically is a thing? He tried not to wince. See, I knew you would ask. Josh accused gently. You slept with her. Page 26, 27, 28. Only once, and technically, well, there was no sleeping. She laughed again, really. She had the best laugh. Jace, I believe you're a dog. He tipped his drink and stared into it. Maybe I was, but not anymore, though. I have changed my ways. She made a disbelieving sound. Right. No, seriously, I'm not the man I used to be. Too bad I'm not really clear on who exactly I've become. I lack direction. Everyone says so. I'm not even interested in women anymore. I don't want to get boom or married. Also, I've given up my place in my family business, and my family is freaked out over that. You live here in Thunder Canyon? No, in Midland, Texas, or I did. I have a nice little spread out there on town, but I put a place up for sale. I'm moving. I just don't know where to yet. In the meantime, I'm here for a week-long family reunion. A reunion that is going on right now. Here at the resort, over at DJ's Rib Shack. I have another question, Jace. Shoot. Is there anything you do want? That, Jocelyn Marie, is the question of the hour. Please come with me back to the rib shack. She was running her finger around the rim of the drink. You didn't answer the question of the hour. All right, there is nothing that I want except for you to come back with me to the rib shack. Her smooth brow furrowed a little, and then I would want to go to your family reunion because only you can protect me from my family and all the women who want these things from me that I am not capable of giving them. She shook her head of thick brown hair and sat straighter on the stool. Before I decide whether to go with you or not, I need to be crystal clear. Fine. And I want you to listen very carefully, Jace. He assumed a suitably intent expression. I'm listening. I'm not going to have Boom Boom with you. Oh, that. He waved a hand. It's okay. I don't care about that now. So you say now. Look, Josh, I like you. You're the finest bright spot in my life in months. I just want to hang out with you for a while. Have a few laughs, no pressure, no drama, nothing hot and heavy, no big romance. She stared at him for several seconds. Her expression, she said, still wasn't sure whether she believed him. Finally, she asked, so you want to be friends? Honestly? Just friends? My God, I would love that. He put some money on the bar of the rib shack. She downed the last of her margarita. Why not? 28, 29, 30. Here comes 31. Josh surprised herself when she agreed to go with Jace. But then she got what he meant when he said he liked her. She liked him too. And not because he was tall, lean, and handsome with thick, glossy, dark hair and velvet brown eyes. Not because he smelled of soap and a nice, clean, subtle, probably very expensive aftershave. Oh, that aftershave. Not because he was undeniably hot. She didn't care about hot. Her life had been pretty much crumbled to nothing a week before. Finding a hot guy, or any other guy for that matter, was the last thing on her mind. Jocelyn liked Jason because he made her laugh, because even though he carried himself like he owned the world, she could see in his eyes that he was really flummoxed by life, that he used to be one guy and now he wasn't that guy anymore, that he wasn't all that familiar with the guy he was now. Josh could relate to that kind of confusion. It was exactly the confusion she felt. That's 31, 32. Page 35. My mother likes you, Jace said. You say that like you're not sure if it's a good or bad. Yeah, well, Ma thinks I got my heart broken, and she doesn't really want me to... She really wants me to be happy. She decided I only need to meet another woman, the right woman, so I can get married and settle down like my brothers and my sister. Now she'll be finding all kinds of way to throw us together. We'll resist, of course. Of course we will. Who broke your heart, Jace? He hedged. It's a long story. I told you mine, she teased. He looked distantly uncomfortable. Well, you know, this isn't the place or the time. She got the message. You don't want to tell me. And you know what? That's okay. Whew, he made a show of wiping his non-existent sweat from his brow. And even though I hate to give my mother the wrong idea about us, I think you ought to come to dinner at Jackson's tomorrow, you know, just to be social. Page 36. She gave him a slow look. She knew he was up to something. And he was, he admitted. I also want you to be there because I like you. Uh-huh, what else? Give it to me straight, Jace. Fair enough. If you come, everyone will think we're together. I mean really together, as in more than friends. And that means my family will stop trying to set me up. You want me to pretend to be your girlfriend. You don't have to pretend to be anything. If you're going with me, they'll assume that there's something going on. It doesn't matter if you tell them that we're just friends. They won't believe you. It doesn't matter that I will tell them that we're just friends. They'll only be certain that we're in denial about all that we mean to each other. Still, it seems dishonest. Is it our fault that people insist on jumping to conclusions? Strangely, she found that she wanted to go to dinner at his brother's house. I'll think about it. Good, and don't let my mother get you alone. She'll only start in about the family business and how she needs me in Midland. And she hopes that you will be open to the idea of moving to Texas because she's already hearing wedding bells in our future. What is the family business anyway? I didn't tell you, it's oil. Except for my oldest brother Dylan, who's a doctor, we're all in oil. She laughed. Knee deep. all the way over our heads in it. Trust me, we're Tribe Oil Industries. I was the vice president in Midland office. I quit the 1st of April. I was supposed to be out of there by the end of May. My mother and Pete kept finding reasons why I had to stay. Finally, I escaped this past Wednesday, and I'm never going back. You sound determined. Believe me, I am. How come you call your dad Pete? He's my stepdad. My father, Charles, was something of a legend in the oil business. He died in an accident on a rig when I was little. My mom married Pete about 2 years later. Her name is Wexler now. None of us were happy when she married him. We were loyal to our dad, and we resented Pete. We? My brothers, my sister, and I. But Pete's not only a good man, he's a patient one. 36, 37, 38. He won all of us over eventually. And Pete had a heart attack a couple years ago. We almost lost him. That really taught us how much he means to us. It's so obvious he's head over heels in love with your mom. Yes, he is. A man like that is damn hard to hate. He took her by the arm. Come on, I want you to meet my brothers. 38, and now we're moving to 39. Josh was starting to wonder how she was going to keep all their names straight when a woman named Melba Laundry, who was Lizzie Traub's great aunt, caught up with them. A big woman with a stern face. Melba possessed a truly impressive presence. Josh tried not to laugh at the energetic old woman, cornered Jace, and insisted she wanted to see him at church the next morning. Of course he'll come, Josh told Melba. There's nothing Jace enjoys more than a good Sunday service. Beside her, Jace made a low groaning sound, and Melba turned her sharp hazel eyes on Josh. Excellent. I want to see you there too, young lady. Well, now, I don't know if I exactly can. We'll be there, Jace promised. Josh elbowed him in the ribs, but he didn't relent. Aunt Melba said, wonderful. The service begins at 10, and she sailed off to the corner for other unsuspecting potential churchgoers. That's 38, 39, and here comes 41. And they talked about his family, about the party at the Rib Shack, about how they lost a paperclip. No. Both thought Lizzie was great, and how Lizzie's Aunt Melba cracked them up. So how long are you here for? He asked. She thought about how much she liked his voice. It was deep, warm, and made her want to cuddle up against him, which she was not, under any circumstances, going to do, ever. Another week. As long as Kenny doesn't put a stop on his platinum card, I'm having my whole 2-week honeymoon. And then back to Sacramento to find a job and a new place to live. We have so much in common, he said, and I'm here for a week too. You told me that, the family reunion, and after that, I suppose I'll have to get alive, but I'm not even going to think about that yet. Jace, I like the way you completely avoid anything remotely resembling responsibility. Aunt Melba would so not improve. Thank you, Josh. I'll do my best. He tipped his long neck at her. I'm glad we're friends. Let's be best friends. All right, I'm up for that. Best friends for a week, he declared. She held her index finger up and reminded him, no benefits. Page 43. He looked at her from underneath his thick brows. You know you're killing me here. Have I in any way put any kind of move on you? Nope, not one. Then can we be done with this constant reminder about how I'm not supposed to try and get you naked? She saluted him with her hand to her forehead. You got it. I believe you. You're not going to make any attempt whatsoever to get into my pants, even if you are a man. Your trust is deeply touching. The phone rang. It was on the side of the table of the sofa. She reached over and picked it up. What? Jocelyn, honestly, is that any way to answer the phone? Without even thinking about it, Josh lowered her feet to the rug and sat up straighter. Mom, hey. She ran a hand back through her hair. What's up? How can you ask me that? You know I'm worried sick about you. I'm fine, really, don't worry. When are you coming home? I told you, a week from tomorrow. She sent Jace a sheepish glance and mouthed the word sorry. That's page 42, 43, 44. He shrugged to let her know it wasn't a big deal. Then he got up and went over to the wall of the windows. He stood gazing out. She indulged a long, slow look at him from his fancy tooled boots up over his lean legs and his hips in a crisp denim, the wide shoulders in a beautifully tailored midnight blue western shirt. His hair was thick and dark, and she had no doubt it would be silky to the touch. A great-looking guy and a considerate one. It was kind of him to pretend to admire the view, to give her space she needed to take this unwelcome call. There ought to be more guys like him in the world. Her mom said, "This is all a big misunderstanding. You realize that, don't you? Kenny would never—" "Mom," she struggled to keep her voice calm and even, "I saw him with Kimberly. There's no misunderstanding what I saw. Kimberly is terribly upset, too. She's hurt that you would even think such horrible, cruel things about her." "Oh, please, don't get me started on Kimberly. I don't even want to talk about this anymore, Mom. I really don't." "Kenny came to see me this evening." Josh gasped. "He what?" She must have had said it aloud because Jace glanced back at her, those sexy dark eyes full of concern. She shook her head at him. He turned to face the window again, and she told her mother, "He has no right to bother you. None. Ever again." "Honey, he's not bothering me. He loves you. He wants to work things out with you. He's crushed that you left him at the altar the way you did. You humiliated him, but he forgives you and only wants to work things out so you two can be together as you were meant to be." There was a cynical bowl full of expression chocolate on the coffee table, and Josh resisted the blinding urge to grab it and fling it at the far wall. "Mom, listen carefully. I am not going to get back together with Kenny. Ever. He and I are done. Finished. As over as it gets. If only your father hadn't left us, you wouldn't be so mistrustful of men. You wouldn't ruin the best chance you're ever going to get with a good man who will give you the kind of life you deserve." She replied through clenched teeth, "There are so many ways. I don't know how to respond to that. Just come home, honey. Come home right away." 44, 45, 46. "Mom, I'm hanging up now. I love you very much, and I'll be home in a week." Jocelyn, wait." But Josh didn't wait for that. She hung up that phone and then stared at it hard, daring it to ring again. But apparently her mother had come to her senses at the minimally and decided to leave awful enough alone. For tonight, anyway. At the window, Jace turned around. "Bad?" She covered her face with her hands. "Yeah, beyond bad." He left the window and came to her, walking softly in those fancy boots of his. She only heard his approach because she was listening for it. "Want to talk about it?" "Ugh, come on." She lowered her hands and met his waiting eyes. He was standing across the coffee table from her. His eyes were in his pockets, accepting of whatever she might say, willing to listen, ready to understand. She tipped her head at the cushion beside her. He took her invitation, crossing around the low table, dropping down next to her, stretching his arm out along the back of the couch, an invitation of his own, an invitation she couldn't pass up at that moment. With a sad little sigh, she leaned her head on his shoulder. He smoothed her hair, but only lightly, and then draped his big arm around her. It was a nice moment, comforting. He was so large, warm, and solid, and he smelled so clean and manly. And she really needed a strong shoulder to lean on, just for a minute or two. She said, "That was my mom." "Yeah, I got that much." I told you she raised me on her own, didn't I?" "You mentioned that, yeah." "My dad disappeared when I was 2. My mom says that he just told her he was through one day and walked out. We never heard from him again." "That's rough, Josh, really rough." He squeezed her shoulder, a touch that was comforting, that seemed to acknowledge how hard it had been for her. "It can really mess with your mind to lose your dad when you're only a kid. It can leave you feeling like you're on the outside looking in at all your friends and their happy whole families. You grow up knowing what normal is. It's all what other kids have." She realized he was speaking from personal experience. "How old were you when you lost your dad?" "Jackson and I were 6. So at least you knew him, your dad." 46, 47, 48. "Kind of. He was always working, making his mark on the world, you could say. But yeah, we all looked up to him with stars in our eyes. We felt safe just knowing he was our dad. He was one of those guys who really fills up a room. Rose always claims it was worse for her than us boys. We never really knew him well. At least that's what she doesn't remember him. She was 2 when he was killed. Same age I was when my dad left, and I don't remember him either. All I have is the absence of him." She pulled away enough to meet Jace's eyes. "You really don't need to hear this. You're sweet to be so understanding, but it's old news, and it's got nothing to do with you." He reached for her, pulled her back down to him. She started to resist, but then, well, why not? If he was willing to listen, she gave him in and staged against him, settling her head against his shoulder again. And yeah, she promised herself she would never cuddle up with him, but this wasn't cuddling, this was only leaning. And there was nothing wrong with a little leaning when a girl needed comfort from a friend. "Keep talking," he said. "What's your mom's name?" "Raylyn. Her maiden name was Levesque. But she kept my father's name, never changed it back. She always said she only wanted a good guy to stand by her, but I don't think she went looking after my dad left. It was like she gave up when it came to men. She never dated when I was growing up, not that I can remember. She worked at Safeway, eventually moving up to managing her own store, which she does to this day. She took care of me. She was a good mom, a strict mom, and she always wanted the best for me. To her, Kenny seemed like a dream come true. So, for some reason, she decided she could trust this cheater. He was always good to her, kissing up to her. It really seems in hindsight, when she would have us over for dinner, he would bring her flowers every time and fall all over the praising of her cooking, and she would know how well he was doing at work, getting promotions one after the other. She just bought Kenny's act, hook, line, and sinker. She refuses to believe that the thing with Kimberly, 48, 49, here comes 50, ever even really happened. Kenny's convinced her that I blown an innocent encounter all out of proportion. Convinced her? You're saying she's speaking to him after what he did to you, because she doesn't believe he did anything bad. I guess she figures she's got no reason not to speak to him. She's your mom. I won't speak ill of her, but I will say she ought to give her loyalties straight. Ha! I wish. When it comes to Kenny, she's got her own rose-colored glasses, and I've yet to convince her that she really needs to take them off. I try to see it from her point of view. She finally decided to give another man a break, to trust Kenny for my sake, and now she just can't bear to admit she got it wrong again. I guess it's understandable, Jace said, but still, you're her daughter. She should be backing you up. Yeah, I wish. You know, I told you I had doubts about Kenny before I caught him with Kimberly. I remember. Well, I went to my mom and confided in her that I told Kenny wasn't the guy I loved anymore, and that sometimes I felt like I didn't even know him. He was so different from who he used to be. She was the one who convinced me my fears were groundless, that I only had very normal case of pre-wedding jitters, that Kenny was a wonderful man, and it was all going to be fine. Jace touched her hair again, gently and easing a kind of touch. So your judgment about the guy was solid. And your mom couldn't, and still can't, let herself see the truth? I'm betting that she'll get the picture in time. I hope so, and the main thing is that you didn't go through with it. You had the guts to turn her and walk away. You're a strong woman, and you're going to be fine. Josh could have stayed there in Jace's arm all night, but she had her head on his shoulder for several minutes now. Too long, really. She needed to pull herself together, no matter how good it felt to lean on him. She sat up and retreated to her end of the sofa. That time he didn't try to stop her, and she was glad that he didn't. If she was going to have a man for a friend, even for just a week, it was nice to think that he was the kind of guy who would know when to put his arm around her and when to let her go. 50-51. 52 and 53. Okay, we're going to stop at 53 tonight because I'm getting a little winded and I work the next 3 days. Mostly, she said, I think I'm doing pretty well, you know. He gave her a slow nod and his dark eyes were steady on hers. I tell myself that I'm getting past what happened last Saturday, but every time my mom calls, she just brings up the whole mess into painful focus all over again. Her blindness to the reality of the situation makes me see way too clearly what a huge mistake I made. She held her thumb and her forefinger up, just a sliver of space between them. I got this close to marrying a guy who cheated on me on our wedding day, and with my own cousin, no less. But you didn't marry him. Focus on that, Josh. She braced her elbow on the sofa arm and rested her chin on her hand. You're right, I didn't, but I did quit my job for the rotten, no-good cheater. I gave up my cute apartment when I got home, and I'll be starting all over again. Maybe you can get your job back. Maybe I can. We'll see. She straightened her spine. What she wanted right now was a long bath accompanied by an equally long, totally self-indulgent, crying jag. Thank you for listening, and I need to stop whining. He gave her a slightly crooked smile. I have the strangest feeling you're giving me the boot. He picked up his beer from the coffee table and downed the last of it. It's only, well, lately talking to my mom really brings me down. She tried to think of something snappy and charming to say so they could end the evening on a happier note, but right then, she was all out of snappy, totally bereft of charming. He rose. It's the great thing about a best friend, even a best friend for a week. You don't have to explain anything. All you have to say is, good night. We'll pick up at page 55 tomorrow. But as you can see, it's a totally alluring book. And Who wouldn't want to be in that man's arms? Doesn't he look like Ryan Pavey? I'm telling you, he looks like Ryan Pavey. But it gives all of us romantic hearts hope that romance still exists in books and movies. Good night. God bless. Keep your social distance. Wash your hands. And if you can't, use your hand sanitizer. But most importantly, wear that mask. I love each and every one of you. Thank you for watching. Until tomorrow night.